Right after Robin Dorsey got divorced, her insurance premium shot up by nearly 57%.
I was outraged at the time, but I didn't have a lot of options. Coming out of a marriage, it's a financial catastrophe, and so having one more bill that actually went up instead of down was really challenging.
Turns out, marital status, income, age, education, and gender are all factors insurance companies can use to set rates.
What do non-driving factors have to do with car insurance?
Baltimore County Delegate Charles Sydnor is pushing legislation to prohibit that practice.
We feel that these factors have discriminatory effects on the community. Instead of striking language, what it's going to do is be express and explicit in saying these are factors that will no longer be acceptable.
The insurance industry cites personal characteristics as an accurate predictor of insurance loss. The rate is based on the level of risk the driver represents. The insurance industry also points out state regulators have long allowed these practices. Property Casualty Insurance Association of America issued a statement saying, in part, factors such as education, occupation, marital status, and gender are actuarially proven to be high predictive of the likelihood of an insurance loss, which allows for more accurate underwriting and pricing. The Maryland Consumer Rights Coalition doesn't buy it.
What they're doing is really economically profiling people. What they can do instead is put a greater weight on things like having a DUI, put a greater weight on having at-fault accidents. And so then you're aligning the incentives correctly.
Supporters of the so-called driver's rights bills want to build on last year's progress when lawmakers struck being a widow as a factor in determining rates. In Annapolis, David Collins, WBAL TV 11 News.